Hey everyone, welcome back. We haven't been around for a bit. We've been taking a little sabbatical, I guess. So how are you doing, Deb? Haven't
I'm doing very good. And how are you doing, Colleen? We're here for what to talk about. And we got an awesome topic today. Would you like to introduce it to our audience?
Yeah, you're going to be a big part of this conversation. And I think a lot of people are interested in what we're going to talk about today. They quite often you hear many people talk about their gardens and the energy that's surrounding different places in nature. So today we're going to talk about the Fae or the fairy world. And I think Deb is quite knowledgeable in that area. So I think, and spring is coming. So that is an important time for the Fae and the fairies to emerge and become more interactive with humans. Don't they do that?
Oh, absolutely. So basically, and it's Easter coming. So one thing with Easter, a lot of you don't know where the Easter bunny comes from. It comes from the goddess Ostara, and she found a beautiful bird that was dying. She took that bird and she transformed it into a bunny rabbit, and the bunny rabbit lays the eggs. But in springtime, the fairies' big job is to wake everybody up. So I wrote a story about this, but you have they wake up the certain fairies have a certain job. They have the water, the air, the plants, the animals, and their job is to wake everybody up. So right now with spring coming, you see the little flowers waking up. It's because the fairy woke it up. It's their job. And there's
Yeah.
fairies everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because actually our connection to the fairy world and the fairies and the fae go back for thousands of years. We're very connected to them. And they relied on us as much as we relied on them. So it was kind of a partnership that really sailed along really harmoniously for many years. But then us humans began to destroy parts of their living quarters. We started to destroy their forests, started to destroy certain habitations and certain places that they used to live. And for a while, quite a while, they became very distant from us. And it was only through the wise women, the shaman, which you're going to talk about today with some of the ceremonies, shamanic or medicine men, that we sort of still remained with some sort of cordial connection. And I think that that connection nowadays is becoming a little more harmonious once again, as many of us are concerned about our environments of Mother Nature and the earth, the habitat of the earth. So there's just one thing before I wanted to continue is there is a distinction between some of the other elements which you're going to talk about today in the fairy world and the fairy themselves. So some other elements, elementals, they don't have personalities, but the fairies have personalities. And that's why they are really distinctive in their whole energy and what they do and where they go. And they're just really interesting to interact with. So there's there's a big connection between humans and the fairy world. And of course, we protected them and they warded us against evil, against theft, against harm, And now some of that has slipped away. So we have to really, I think one of the things we really want to establish today is that we want each and every one of you to reconnect and be mindful of the fairy world and what that means and where that goes. So can you talk a little bit about the fairies?
Absolutely. So one of the things as you're talking, one of the things you guys want to remember is whatever a bee likes, a fairy likes. If it hurts a bee, it hurts a fairy. So don't use any pesticides. Like I don't put any pesticides out. Make sure that you plant wildflowers. They absolutely love that. Fairies are really cool. So when I first saw my first fairy, I freaked right out because I thought there was something wrong with my eyes because I'm in my living room and I see little bitty teeny tiny lights like red light and blue light and green lights. And I'm going, what the heck is that? And I thought it was going insane. I thought it was going crazy until somebody says, oh no, that's just the fairies hanging around with you. It's like, uh-oh. So then I started to buy books going, well, they're coming to me, so I want to give back to them. So then I go, well, what do they like? And I heard that they like to steal stuff. So, and it's like, I've already had problems with things missing all the time. So I'm going, okay, well, if it's the fairies, I'm going to ask them to bring it back, but I'm going to give them something that they like. So I found out through your courses and other things that I've read, they love chocolate. They love wine. They like anything sweet. They like honey and milk. They like to be spoiled. So I actually started making them little fairy houses with furniture that they could actually sit on and make them a little cove that they can go hide in. So I started to, people think I'm crazy anyway, but I started to create all these different things in my house. And in plants, I would put a little chair there and they're going, what are you doing that for? Well, the fairy's up there. It's like, wait, how do you know the fairy's up there? It's like, I just know. It's like, look, take a picture of it and you'll be able to see it. Use some incense, burn the incense around your plant and you'll be able to see the fairy in there. It's like,
That
well, you're
is
crazy.
so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much you can
When you
do
start to do all of these things, do you notice a difference in the energy of where you
in my
live?
house.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, I'm so much, well, I'm playful anyway, but I find it's more exciting. So one of the things that I learned from your psychic development 3, right? It was like in my development 3 that I have a fairy and I always felt something on my head. I had a hat on all the time. She's sitting with me right now. My fairy likes to sit on my head. She's a pixie, she's green, but that's where she sits. So I always think that there's something heavy on my head and I'm going, no, there's nothing there. It's her. She's here today. And then
Oh,
you just call them. Yeah. Yeah.
so
So you might be able to see her.
does she have a name?
I call her Belle. I call her Belle, but and not because of Tinker Bell, it's just Bella. So she's with me quite a bit. She's in one of my stories. I tell stories about the elements all the time, the elementals, all the spirits. And that's what my books are about, is all the spirits in the fairy realm, which is quite neat. But yeah,
Yeah.
she's with me a lot. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
we can actually interact as Deb does, and Deb's a seer, so maybe she has a little bit more insight into seeing these creatures and how they're interacting with nature and around her. But you can actually go to places where you have more of a chance of connecting and interacting with these individuals. For example, many of you may live in an apartment or you don't have access to a garden or a big lush, but you have access to some of the places where fairies live. And fairies live in liminal spaces. So those are spaces that have a strong connection between this world and the other world. So they're like in between spaces, or they're called in between spaces. So some of these spaces are, of course, like caves, tunnels, woodlands, forests, of course. If you get deep in the forest, don't be surprised and you get lost. It's probably a fairy that's going to lead you out of there if you connect with them. elaborate gardens. They're actually gardens in your backyard. Do you have some fairies in your gardens? Do you have
My fairies live, well, my fairies live in my tree. I have bushes. So they live in the bushes. Yeah, and we
yeah,
have a tree that has a hollow stem because it got hit by lightning, so it's hollowed out, and they like to live in there.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
they like those odd places. They also can live on beaches or up on cliffs. They can live in the parks. But they especially like places like the crossroads because the crossroads is that in between space. They also love spaces where two streams cross because that signals that in between space between the living world and their world. And they like the shadow lands, like the marshes and the bogs and swamps. And I think even over in Regina, you have kind of a swamp around Wascana Lake, right? If you
yes,
go
absolutely.
out farther to the south, I think you can get into the swampy marshlands. So that would be a place where the fairies would like to be. And they also like um, fences and hedges and those gnarly spaces. That's why over in Ireland they have the fairy forts. And these liminal spaces, even the energy between dusk and darkness or the morning light, the dawn, and just before dawn, those are spaces. They love labyrinths and they love circles, stone circles. And so you can just create your own stone circle in your backyard. And you're probably going to get some energy from the fairy from the other world. Vines, plants, they love all of that stuff. So we kind of have um, why do you think we should work with the fairies?
So I'm going to ask a question with a question. Why wouldn't we want to work with the fairies?
Yeah, and
Right?
there's many people as myself back in the day said that's the line that I
Mhm.
draw that there is no such thing as fairies, which I soon discovered that there actually is special
Mhm.
places, portals, and areas where you can actually really connect with them. Um, But I think it's important for us to work with them as we did in yesteryears, because they weave wards around us to protect us. And if we don't work with them, they can actually be kind of nasty.
Yeah.
So, do you know of anything that they do that's kind of nasty? They can bring bad
Well,
luck.
yeah, they also, well, they're thieves. They like to steal. Um, they will make your life, they can make your life quite miserable. You mentioned the word luck, a lot of, so First Nations people work with fairies and the little people on a constant basis. I've even seen like, so for my house, you would come into my house, you'd see a normal house. I see the forest that the fairies live in because they live like right with us. So there's portals everywhere. I've had things go missing. I've had animals just disappear and then come back. So they can lead you, like you said, get you lost. They can lead your brain and give you a lot of brain fog, put you in spaces where you don't know the difference between reality and fantasy. So you don't want to mess with anything in the Fae. You
And
really don't.
I think is some good words of advice.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in them, like back in the day, I was told some of the farmers to gain more land in Ireland started to knock down some of the fairy forts. and they actually began to encounter some really bad luck. So
Mhm.
I think I'm not quite sure about this, but I think in Ireland they I think they're not allowed to knock them over more. I'm not sure about that. Maybe somebody here could correct that or find that information out. So, what did different types of, we know that there are two types of fairies, basically, if you want to do it in a basic. There is the trooping fairy, and trooping fairies live in groups. There's a whole group of them. They live together, and they have communities. They work together, uh, and they would be considered the Seelie. And most of those are really kind to individuals. But then there's the solitary fairy, and that's what you're connected with, the solitary fairy.
Yeah, mainly.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
they
like
live in themselves by themselves, but they can be a little malevolent. They can be a little nasty if you aren't cooperating with them. Like that, it was said that that's who's messing all your hair up during the night if it's in knots and all knotted up. So, this goes back to the Germans, the Celtic cultures, the Scottish. It goes way back to Germany, obviously the indigenous to the Vikings. Everyone knew that the Fae existed. And, there's all kinds of things and stories that go on, which you could probably find in one of Deb's books if you order it. But there are dark fairies and there are light fairies. And you don't want to really, you better get something out for the evil ones and
yeah.
help them out to form a partnership.
And there's books out there that will warn you about the good fairies and the bad fairies. Um, there's a book that was written, the gentleman who helped out with, it's called literally called Good Fairies and Bad Fairies. And he did a lot of storytelling with the Muppets. So that his drawings, but this book here warns you and helps you on how to ward off the negative fairies, and it's called Forbidden Mysteries of the
Mhm.
fairy witchcraft. I do not recommend this to just anybody. You have to be a little bit more advanced to understand that. You don't want to be conjuring anything that you don't understand, especially in the fairy world. You don't want to be playing with that energy. Trust me, not a good thing to play with. They're not toys. Yeah.
So we have this fairy world that we can find in these other the connections and the liminal spaces. So what have you encountered in those spaces? There, because there's a few other, there's not just fairies there, but
Oh
there's a
yeah, there's
few
all sorts
other.
of, yeah. So I work with a lot of the spirits from all the spirits from the fairy world. So, and I work with First Nations very closely. And this is the season now. They're doing their song ceremony right now to get ready for the summer where they do their rain dance and their sun dances. So when they do that, they're connecting with the fairies. They're connecting with the little people. So if you ever heard of the Indian name, I got my Indian name a few weeks ago, which I'm excited about. So my name is Singing Thunderbird Woman. So that's my indigenous name. And with that being said, I think it's funny because I call them characters, but one of the animals that I deal with that I work with on a regular basis is the Thunderbird, and they blow fire. They're very similar to the dragon, and I wrote a story about that where the the Thunderbird egg turns into a dragon egg. And then 3 days later, I found out from my medicine man that, oh yeah, that's what they do. The Thunderbird shapeshift and turn into different creatures. So you don't know whether it's a Thunderbird or a dragon, or if it's a dragon or a Thunderbird. They both blow fire, but they're very mystical creatures. The Sabe, which is Bigfoot. They don't like being called Sasquatch. It's a bad word, so we don't call them Sasquatch. They are keepers. They are keepers and protectors of the fairy realm and Earth and the living realm. So they go back and forth from space to space, taking care of everybody. That's their job.
And that really came as a surprise to me that Bigfoot would belong to that realm, but it would make sense, right? Because we
Yeah,
don't see Bigfoot very often. And it's almost like he really does just walk into this world and walk right out of it again.
yeah,
That is really interesting to know
yeah.
that.
Yeah, he's my favorite. They run quite quick. They're very cool. Yeah, I love Sabe, one of my favorite spirits to work with. And then so for all the First Nations people that are freak out about the backward spirits, they are really cool. They look like werewolves. They're black. They got these funky claws, like funky feet, and they look like werewolves. They got horns, and they got a weird witchy wish, I call it the like their back kind of spine kind of sticks out. They're literally backward spirits. So if you're like, okay, so how you would talk to them is, I hate you, then they know that you love them,
Mm.
right?
So
And
would
they
they
during
be
the
connected to the werewolf then?
Yes, I believe they are because they look very similar to them. And it's funny because I went to my first sun dance last year, rain dance last year, and they said, the backward spirits are coming. And I'm going, what are you talking about? They've been here since 4 o'clock this morning. I'm going, they've been here all day. Because when I'm doing sun dances and rain dances, my job is to be their protector. So I'm on guard. I don't sleep. So I'm on guard. All the spirits are around. So I watch all the spirits. I connect with them. I talk to them. I'm 4 days of just connecting with spirits. I'm going, they've been here all along. What they do it in their sun dance and their rain dance in the afternoon, they have people dressing up as the backwards spirits walking around like a parade, and just entertaining. You're not allowed to look at the backwards spirits. You're not to look down. You look away from them, or they steal stuff. But you would leave them a gift. You leave them a gift of good fortune, and they will bring good fortune your way, just like the fairies.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's really interesting because with the law of exchange, that
Yes.
really ties into that connection in the fairy world. There's
Yeah.
also, in the Welsh, there's the elves that belong in that liminal space with the fairies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
Totally.
also the mind spirits, and the mind spirits are the knockers. So in the mines, it was said that if you heard the knocking from the spirit, there you're sure to find your valuable mineral, whether you were searching for gold or coal or whatever it was. So they were the knockers of the mines. And in Germany, of course, they really believe this wholeheartedly. Is there other ones that you're?
Well, you've got the little people which we mentioned that give the names. You've got the trolls and the gnomes, and you've got the what are they called? Uh, gargoyles.
Yes, the gargoyles. And
The gargoyle
throughout
and the
history,
rock spirits.
yes, and it's interesting,
Mermaid.
we look at the gargoyles and we think, oh, they're so evil because they're so ugly, right? But they
Mhm.
were mounted on churches. They were mounted on holy spaces and and they were because they were very protective of humans and they wanted humans to succeed. So that is really interesting. Even throughout history, all the fairy tales tap in to the fairy world, right?
Mhm.
The shoemaker, and that was an unseelie. An unseelie is a fairy that doesn't want to be seen, but wants to help you out. And in that story, of course, the shoemaker would wake up during the night and realize that there was a fairy working hard to cobbling his shoes, and it produced great luck for him. And then, of course, the ones that you see, Deb, are the Sealies.
Yeah.
So they like to be seen and they like to interact. So, yeah, so there's also the lake and the river fae. They like those
Mhm.
streams, they like the water and the beaches. And there's also the mountain fae as well. And you're going to find them up in the higher realms of the mountains and in the mountain areas. And they were a guide. Also, they guided travelers through these various destinations. So you were mentioning the gnomes. Did you say
Yeah.
gnomes?
Gnomes, yeah. And then the mermaids too. We can't forget the nymphs and the mermaids.
Yes, in the water realms, right?
Yeah.
So do you ever work with the mermaids?
Yeah, I do. They're quite fun. So I took a while ago, I took a workshop online. And what I really enjoyed was the combs. So a lot of the stories that anybody knows, the Littlest Mermaid, and how she's got like the fork and the big old hopper, and she has a comb. They actually, and shells and all the different kinds of things. They use the comb to comb over the water. So if you want to call on a mermaid, but you better have an exchange for them, make sure there's a gift. Always give a gift to those who you're calling out forward. You can call them with a comb and just strike the water, and they'll
Mm,
come running.
lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But they can
And
be
it,
tricky. They're worse than fairies. They can be very tricky. And you teach that they can
yes,
lure you into the water. So be careful.
yes. And they are especially magnetic on a bridge. Have you ever been on a bridge and you're looking down at the water and you just kind of feel like jumping in?
Mhm.
Maybe I'm the only one that kind of
I
feels like
am.
that.
Yeah.
But that is the Fae actually luring you into the water. And most of these elemental fae, they are connected to an element. They are connected to water or earth or fire or air. So, we have those little creatures, the salamanders, they're actually fire, which you would think that the salamanders would kind of be more water, but they're not. They're very impulsive little creatures and they're quite finicky and fickle. And so they want to work specifically on a specific agenda. Let's get it done and over with. They're very impulsive and they're quite intense. And so you better get at it if you're working with one of them. There's no procrastination whatsoever with them. Slips are the air, of course, and we're air beings, and many people don't realize this. Everybody looks at humans and they think that we're water because we have so much water in us, but we're actually walking through air and we cannot live without air. Uh, we can go swimming, but we need the air, and there's no air in the water. So we're
Mhm.
not really actually water beings. The fish are water beings. And we can't live in fire because it takes all the oxygen away from us. And we can't live in the earth. We can't live underground unless we create air in there. So we're actually really connected to the air elementals. And so, yeah, they're a whirlwind. is all I can kind of say. So when those big gusts of wind come up, I kind of feel like they're very present. And the Udins are the water elements, which of course is connected to the um lot the water elements with it just slipped my mind.
Yeah. The mermaids?
The mermaids, yes, of
They,
course.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
mermaids don't look like these beautiful women and men that they make it look like. They kind of have a quite interesting look about them, but they're quite mystical. They're very mystical. I actually found a puppet that looks it's very similar to the what the mermaids really look like. So we'll be getting that one soon enough.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
first. Yeah.
And, so I think, it's hard for some people to recognize how many of these interesting little creatures are around us and actually working in our yards and doing all that. But there are things that we can do to work with them, even if you don't see them. And
Mhm.
what are some of those things that we can do, Deb?
Well, basically, like I mentioned before, don't use pesticides, right? Leave food out for them. They're hungry. Plant flowers. Give them shelter. Give them any kind of shelter, but help with so don't be cruel to the plants and the animals. Take care of everything. If you take care of the plants, then the elementals will take care of you. They
Yes.
really will. Because they need the plants to survive, and so do we. And the bees are very close working with and so do the birds. Like the birds, some of the fairies, if they're tired, they'll ride a bird. Some of them don't have wings, so they'll be riding the birds. So don't be cruel to the animals, especially the birds, because you never
Yeah.
know, there might be a fairy sitting on their back.
Yes, exactly. And the birds are also in danger in our
Mhm.
society today. We are losing actually quite a few species, but also the Fae are also connected to those insects as well, like the
Mhm.
dragonflies, the butterflies, and they use them as
Yeah.
well and interact with them.
And the
If you don't live in the country or if you don't have a yard, you can still be participating with the fairy world, even if you live in your apartment. And you can just really ask them to be of assistance to you because they're literally everywhere. Our worlds are so close to theirs that it's almost a sliver like that rides right alongside ours, parallel. And so they're very, very close to us and connected to us. So you can also leave out a little bowl of honey specifically for them. They really like shiny things. So, hang a little bracelet that shimmers in the moonlight and say, "This is for you." What else could we do for them?
Feeding them. So, like you said, honey, giving them nourishment, giving them a place to sleep. I've given them blankets and pillows and gave them a little bed. Um, I just acknowledge that they're there. Just acknowledging that they're there and asking how you can be a service to them. Doing meditations and connecting with them. Putting out a fairy like the seven pointed star is the fairy star. So putting that out for them, making them a star. No sevens, they're highly connected with all the sevens. Seven is the fairy number that represents the peace and being loyal and peaceful and kind and cordial. All those rules and laws are also fairy laws. So being kind to others, you'll you'll have kindness brought back to you.
Yes, and that's the
Yeah.
beauty of fairy and working with the fairy.
Hmm.
Is they are like a little lucky charm. They're also deeply connected with the mushrooms. So, which is really interesting because the earth itself, the fungi, is really the fabric of our earth, and it's embedded in all the soil, and it sustains life. And many of you, I know, if you're into any health, are actually ingesting mushroom gummies and taking dried mushrooms in your shakes and stuff. And that is really, really connected. Mushrooms are really connected to the fairy world. So, years ago, I used to take my little grandson out and we would hunt for massive amounts of mushrooms growing because we knew that that's where the fairies were. And so you can actually go on fairy hunts, and the liminal spaces are important, but also connections to mushrooms. Or when all of a sudden you see a large patch of um, a certain species of flowers growing that's really seems odd in whatever place it's in, is most likely the fairies at work. And if you want to connect with them, simply go out during those times in the evening, just before dusk, and or just in the early hours as the sun is rising. And take a lantern or burn some incense and allow it to sort of drift on the wind. And you can also, gather stones in your yards or in your crystals because they love the crystals as well. So you can create a little garden of crystals in your house. And some people actually create little fairy homes or gardens in a big dish on their tables. So the fairies are pleased and work with them in their houses. So you also candles, smudging, lights, flickering lights, water they love, like leave a bowl of water out and just lace it with a little perfume or something organic perfume like flowers,
Yeah.
roses,
This, yeah.
and they'll love you. They will literally love you for it. And you don't want to get them angry. And if you do get them angry, I would suggest that you apologize. Because if you go deeper into the subject, there's all kinds of things like changelings and all kinds of energy that can move through. So before we wrap up, I would like Deb is writing some children's books, and they're really, really interesting. They're really great stories. And she is connected with some of these books. There is connections to this other world, right? So do you want
Mhm.
to talk just briefly about and what you're doing? Because you're going to some libraries, you're going to host some events there. So, what are your
Yeah.
stories about?
So basically, where I got them from in the first place, they're called Stories by Spirit. And they're literally about the fairy world and the different spirits about the fairy world. I connect with the earth and the sun and the moon. And a lot of I do have puppets, but I didn't bring them here. I actually have them over at a market because they're doing an Easter event this weekend. But I have a sabe, I have dragon, I have a thunderbird, I have all sorts of different. I've got the fireflies. The firefly is very connected to the fairy. I'm trying to find a fairy. And they're about what I connect to when I do automatic handwriting. I do these through ceremony. I've done automatic handwriting in Colleen's classes. Shh. And then when I'm doing these and her meditations, so when I'm doing these automatic handwritings, when I'm connecting in these meditations, I take these and I turn them into stories. And I connect with these spirits
Yeah.
and I'm telling their story.
So we're
And
really excited. Are you going to be publishing some of these?
yes, I actually, so one of the things that we were struggling with is how to do the illustrations. I have a friend of mine who is a photographer, and I thought, what a perfect way to connect with the real spirit by using photography instead of drawings. So
Mm,
we're hoping to have our first book published by the end of May. Because I have a friend of mine who's also connected with the Fae, so, and that realm, all three of us are very spiritually connected. So we're going to take these books, we're getting them published. We're probably going to go through Amazon with Kindle publishing because we're going to get them on Amazon anyway. So we're probably going to start that way and then eventually go to another publisher to get them books. I have 7 already started. 5 are written and almost ready to publish. The other 2 we're working on because every time I connect with one spirit, I get channeling off and go to another spirit. So it's like it just makes another story and it's a continuous loop. With these stories, I'm going to do workshops with families and teaching them about auras, teaching them about the spirits, teaching them about the sub-bay, teaching about like the thunderbird and the dragons and the fairies and the mermaids. The mermaids took me off in a totally different direction. So their story is being written next. But yeah,
yes.
there's lots of stories and lots of workshops. So keep an eye on that. I'm going to be going to libraries, just trying to figure out where do I go because I'm working at doing my readings and healing sessions at Dermaposh, but they don't have a space to do workshops. But there's a library right down the way. So I'm going to be renting library space and doing them there
And
and
they're
reading
in the
stories.
Southland Mall in Regina, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we're in Southland Mall in Regina at Dermaposh, and the workshops, a lot of them are going to be done in my backyard in the summertime. We're going to do libraries. I've tried different venues, but they're just not big enough, or it's just not the right fit. Eventually, I'll own my own house, and then we'll be doing them all there. We'll have haunted playground and all sorts of fun stuff, and invite all the fairies in, and we just have a great time.
And you know, maybe that's what the world needs now because the world is undergoing a shift. And we need to reconnect to some of the creatures of yesteryear that we used to always integrate with and work together with them. And so I think it's important for all of us to kind of bring out the child in ourselves and and play around. And that's exactly how the fairies work. Like they're not on a schedule. They don't do one thing. They
Mm-mm.
will do this for a while and then they'll shoot you off to do something else. They're really not structured, and humanity is
Yeah.
so so structured and so restrictive on ourselves that we should be a little more like the Fae and just let ourselves be, to create in a very happy way,
Mhm.
rather than these stringent um, protocols that we put ourselves under. So,
Exactly.
yeah, it would be a lot more fun, wouldn't it, Deb? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot more to be said about the fae and the fairy and the fairy world, but just remember that these creatures are very close to us and
Hmm.
are, and especially now around the Easter celebration, like Deb was saying, that we definitely are going and should be reconnecting with the magic of the fairy world and all the creatures in the fairy world. So if you
And
don't believe in the Easter Bunny, you better start changing your mind about that.
well,
But
it's true.
just a little different form.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Easter Bunny is true. Like it's about good. So if anybody knows about the goddess and the gods, um, the god, so there's Cernunnos. and there's Ostera. So Istra is the another name for Ostera, and she took a bird that was dying and turned it into a rabbit, and the rabbit lays the eggs. So his name is not Peter, guys. It is not a boy rabbit. It's a girl rabbit.
Yes, of
Guess what?
course.
Again, her name is Istra.
Yeah.
Istra the bunny rabbit, yes. And
So
Easter and yeah. Ostera is a shapeshifter. She shapes into a bunny rabbit.
yeah, and there's a lot of stories depending on what culture you come from, with the celebration of Easter. And of course, the church plugged into that energy as well and utilized it. And I'm a herbologist, and some of the plants, like if you want to also work and just leave plants out, some of the plants that you can leave, of course, is lavender. They love lavender. They like thyme. And who doesn't like thyme? I love it. The willow and the pussy willows are out now, so they love the pussy willows. They like bluebells and lady slippers and some of those plants and honeysuckle. They like all of those. And of course, they love the mushrooms as well. They're very connected to the mushrooms.
So just to add to that, so the other day I was in my bedroom. I do not have any pussy willow anywhere near my house, or have I seen one in Regina? I had a piece of pussy willow on my floor yesterday in my room. So the fairy brought me a little gift.
Yes, and fairies
Yeah,
can do that. Actually, fairies can, if you give to them, they will also give to you, just like a spirit or a loved one who has passed on has the ability to also give to you. And so do the fae. So that was a
exactly.
very special gift. Yeah, I love it. Sometimes we just find these unusual things around us, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been a long time since we got together and did what to talk about. And so I'm so glad that we reconnected,
Absolutely.
got started again. So
Yeah.
uh, we're going to leave you folks with that. You can pick up some of Deb's books and you can reach her at
Deb.the.seer@gmail.com, or my phone number is 306-533-1248. Know that I'm discontinuing books, but you can find them on Amazon. I've seen them over at Chapters and or Indigo now. You can get them all over the internet. Also, if you're in Regina, you could probably get them over at Warehouse Books because
Perfect.
she carries them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That
yes.
that's the really great information. And so if somebody was looking for some books, they could contact you and you could give them the name of the
Absolutely.
books. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I'm
definitely
Colleen
connected.
Jorgensen. My business is Spiritual Journey. I am astrologer, psychic medium. So if you'd like to contact me, you can reach me at accsj@live.ca or give me a call at 306-781 1300. So we're heading into spring, and I think we'll probably start to do more of these in the next month. Do another what to talk about next month.
Before we go, I want to do a little plug. So if anybody wants a wellness tea and they are looking for something that is amazing, make sure you pick up Spiritual Journeys wellness teas. I am on her detox tea. I'm taking her ADHD tea. And I've sold a lot of those for people who are dealing with anxiety. It's amazing. It's amazing. So if you're having like an emotional day, grab a tea. You're going to find that emotion is just going to disappear. It just goes away. It's really cool.
Yes.
And then
Yeah,
you
and
have
I
your lung
love
tea and
that.
your heart tea and your kidney tea. And yeah, you got all sorts of teas.
I do. They're wellness teas. And so they're not just your standard herb tea. They are actually specifically geared towards an ailment, although they're not a cure, they're just assistance in whatever ailments you have. And so, yeah, and the ADHD is an adaptogen, has a couple adaptogens in it to sort of ease off on that cortisol and lower some of those levels down to manageable. So,
And we can't forget the men's tea. We've got a men's tea too.
yes, yes, we
And
do have the men's
menopause.
team because men's health is really important. And they're quite often, I find, neglected in the world of alternative health measures or herbology. So I wanted to develop something for the men as well. So, yes, and you can pick those up over at Deb's Place as well. And you can follow us both on Facebook. And you can follow me also on my website, which I'm still working on getting built up, but it's there at spiritualjourney.ca. So, yeah, we're glad that you joined us and make sure to tune in next month. And we're going to be talking about something different than the usual conversations. So we're going to leave you with that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next time.